Let's start with some meditation. So get comfortable. Is settling into the posture, whatever posture that is. Sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. And it's great to know that we can use meditation actually no matter what we're doing. And when we're sitting, standing, walking, or lying down, and that's our only focus, the only thing we have to pay attention to, of course, that is the most conducive to becoming calm, relaxed, stable, settled. Unified. So the mind becomes unified, not thinking about different things, jumping around, but coming to a point of focus. Not in a rigid way, but in a way that's relaxed, happy. We also become unified as a collective when we meditate together. There's a sense of coming together. Something in that spiritual energy that a human being has the ability to tune into, or maybe it's something more like letting go of all the interference so that we can really be in that spiritual vibration, energy, state of blessing. And there's a connection with each other right there. A harmonizing effect. That is, if we let go of our own position, our own views, our own obsessions, and then we open up to what we might call pure awareness, mindfulness, an open, receptive state. Where we can be happy and content and relaxed. The holiday of the heart. And in that kind of basic state, and whatever arises, we can be present to it. Moods or thoughts, feelings. not giving them attention, but not pushing them away either. It's one way to practice. It's not like floating or just allowing everything. There's a presence and a wisdom there, observing, knowing these thoughts and feelings, moods, perceptions for what they actually are, void of any core substance. We can see them as passing phenomena, regardless of their nature. If the mind wants to drift, then we can be more proactive, placing it on your preferred meditation object, the breath, maybe the Brahma Viharas, body contemplation, whatever feels most conducive to calming and centering the mind. Meditation is most beneficial without some idea of I'm going to get something out of this. We try to get samadhi, get jhana, get some specific benefit. It's like strangling the meditation. But it is useful to have the intention to steady the mind, to let go of whatever might be troubling us, to let go of the past or the future. To relax, to release whatever might be interfering with our peace and happiness. Now I'll gradually bring the meditation to a close. Or continue to enjoy that kind of inner peace and harmony if it's there, while listening a little bit to the Dhamma. Had a couple of questions come in recently about anger and resentment. In these cases, these are long-term issues with people who are close to them. And I'm not going to really answer that completely because so many different situations in life to go into the details, but there are a few things that I think are valuable for all of us to reflect on from time to time. And I want to share 2 or 3 short suttas with you on this topic. I'm going to start with a sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya in the Book of Threes. The title that you see in Sutta Central, translated by Bhikkhu Sujato, is Like Diamond. And it says, these 3 people are found in the world, which is the way the Buddha starts many suttas, talking about a certain aspect of human experience and identifying the different ways that we can be with that or experience it or show up. So he said these 3 people, 3 kinds of people, or 3 people are found in the world. What 3? A person with a mind like an open sore, a person with a mind like lightning, and a person with a mind like diamond. So he says, who has a mind like an open sore? It's a person who's irritable and bad-tempered. Even when lightly criticized, they lose their temper, becoming annoyed, hostile, and hard-hearted. And they display annoyance, hate, and bitterness. They're like a festering sore, which when you hit it with a stick or a stone, discharges even more. In the same way, a person is irritable and bad-tempered. Even when lightly criticized, they lose their temper, becoming annoyed, hostile, and hard-hearted. And they display annoyance, hate, and bitterness. This is called a person with a mind like an open sore. Graphic. You ever hit your open sore with a stone or a stick? That can happen. Not intentionally, maybe, but we've probably all been in this situation, maybe, and I think maybe almost everyone has been that person or been around someone who's got that kind of mental state. And then he says there's the person whose mind is like lightning. It's the person who truly understands basically the Four Noble Truths. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. They're like a person with keen eyes or clear eyesight in the dark of the night who sees a flash of lightning. In the same way, a person really understands these Four Noble Truths. This is a person with a mind like lightning. Did you want to share the screen? No. And the third one is the one who has a mind like diamond. It's a person who realizes the undefiled freedom of heart and freedom by wisdom in this very life. And they live having realized it with their own insight due to the ending of defilements. It's like a diamond, which can't be cut by anything at all. not even a gem or a stone. In the same way, a person realizes the undefiled freedom of heart, freedom by wisdom in this very life. It's a person with a mind like diamond. These are the three people in the world. And this is in the Book of Threes, number 25. And I was reflecting on this sutta, these three kinds of people, which I know for myself, I can remember times when I was like a person with an open sore, you know, irritable and reactive. And then the nice thing about this is that as human beings, conditioned by, you know, so many inputs, so many influences, we change. When we go from sometimes being that person with an open sore to understanding, in this case, the Buddha says completely, fully understands the Four Noble Truths. Well, maybe we don't fully understand right away, but we get to the point where we know that, you know, that irritability and anger, reactivity and defensiveness and so on is suffering. And we start to understand how to work with that and how to let it go, become more patient. Of course, all the aspects, and because it's an understanding of the Four Noble Truths, and we start practicing the Eightfold Path, and then all the components of that as we develop them, help us to let go of that previous reactivity and irritability and anger. So we can transition from that first stage to the second stage. You might think of it like that. And then that third stage of full awakening, and, you know, even if that's, you know, for now an idea, or maybe we've met people who are at that point already, or even when we can be closer to that. And saying it this way isn't to try to reinforce this idea that it's somehow far away or too difficult for us to realize, but to give encouragement that, you know, sometimes maybe we find ourselves being so clear about the Dhamma, so clear about what's worth holding on to and what isn't. Basically, nothing in this world is worthy of clinging. So the Buddha says. And then when the mind is at that point, then there's nothing that can then scratch it or harm it. It's like diamond. A beautiful concept, I think. I feel like the images really help to solidify it, and we can take this, hopefully take this in as encouragement to make that progression a reality in our experience. And then also as we're dealing with other people and we see, and I think sometimes the resentment that we might feel, or the grudge we might carry against someone, or just carrying the hurt feelings from past experiences with them. If we recognize that it's possible to change, even if we may not see change in other people, that we have that opportunity ourselves. And then to really to notice that holding on to the resentments over what's happened in the past becomes a barrier for us. That can really help us let go, can help us recognize how much suffering is happening for someone who's still got a mind like an open sore. It's a very apt image, I think, recognizing that that kind of hostility, maybe abusive nature, abusiveness, I don't even want to call it nature, abusive kind of response to life is all conditioned. And to really appreciate how much suffering there is there, it can be sometimes a help for support for our letting go. So with that as the kind of background, I want to go on to another way that the Buddha talked about anger. And this is also in the Anguttara Nikaya. It's in the Book of Fours, number 44. And here the Buddha is talking about the way we hold or view anger. He said there are four things that oppose the true teaching or oppose the Dhamma. He said, what for? Valuing anger, valuing denigration, valuing material things, and valuing honor rather than the true teaching, rather than the Dhamma. These four things are what oppose the true teaching. And then he says a practitioner who values anger and denigration, possessions and honor, doesn't grow in the true teaching, like a rotten seed in a good field. But those who value the true teaching, who have lived it and are living it now, these do grow in the teaching, like well-watered herbs. Again, a really lovely image. And we see in our world the valuing of anger and denigration, criticizing others, putting them down, the valuing of material things, the valuing of honor. This is extremely common in our world, in our experience. And to, take in that idea that this is really holding back growth and development in Dhamma. And it's very easy to get caught up in the values of the world. And this can be part of, like this kind of situation we might find ourselves in where we're holding a grudge against someone or holding resentment long term. And if we look at it from that perspective, it's like, what is that about? Do we think somewhere underneath it all that there is some good in that resentment or anger, some protective force there? If we think of it as something that holds us back in our own development towards peace and happiness and joy, fulfillment in the practice, it might help us to let it go, let it resolve, to recognize that there's something more important than being fixed on this negativity, even if it's negativity towards what's unwholesome, but to really make that shift to more equanimity instead. And I'm going to share one more sutta with you, I think. This one is in the Book of Threes, 132. It's called Etchings. This is another image that I really like and I've talked about before, but I think it's useful to bring to mind. This is where the Buddha says there are three people found in the world: a person like a line drawn in stone, a person like a line drawn in sand, a person like a line drawn in water. And who is a person like a line drawn in stone? It's a person who's often angry, and their anger lingers for a long time. It's like a line drawn in stone, which isn't quickly worn away by wind and water, but lasts for a long time. And who is a person with like a line drawn in sand? It's a person who's often angry, but their anger doesn't linger long. It's like a line drawn in sand, which is quickly worn away by wind and water. It doesn't last long. And who is a person like a line drawn in water? It's a person who, though spoken to by someone in a rough, harsh, and disagreeable manner, still stays in touch, interacts with and greets them. It's like a line drawn in water, which vanishes right away and doesn't last long. So this is a very lovely image, I think. And we can work with this in the same way with other people as we can with our own mind. So when angry thoughts arise, or, there's, again, I'm not even going to try to like address all the different possibilities, because there's so much that we can learn from anger and resentment in ourselves. Maybe we have to understand, what the underlying causes are so that we can heal what's there, so we can protect ourselves in wholesome ways without this anger and resentment and so on, like that. But we can also think in terms of how can I work with feeling in a way that I can let it dissolve as if it were just drawn in the water, seeing it for what it is, conditioned responses, something I can let go of. So when you think about these kinds of, situations, like I was reflecting on a story some friends told us, really, really dealing with someone who had a mind like an open sore. And this was a situation where these two couples went on a vacation together, and they knew each other and had done some things together before, but this time they were kind of surprised because one of the people who was a very wealthy, highly respected physician, one of the best in his field, of his specialty, and they were enjoying this trip, but there were some circumstances that there was an event that they were going to go to where this man was going to play golf, and some things happened along the way that caused them to arrive a little bit late, and he didn't have a chance to kind of go through his routine of warming up for the golf to start, and then he didn't have a very good game, and then he was angry about it, and he told the other fella, you have to take responsibility for my low golf score because you did this or that to, like it was your fault that we got here late or something like that. And it was so surprising. And then they're riding in this car all together, and this man wouldn't talk to the other couple. And if they talked, they had to go through the wife. So they're all in the same car. But if this man wanted to say something, he'd say it to his wife, and then she would say it to the other couple. If the other couple said anything, they'd say it to the wife, and then she'd say it to her husband. And it was just comical, really, so extreme. But this anger and resentment, and to kind of look at this person's life, there was a lot of material wealth and honor, and there was this, kind of like clinging to having things be a certain way and wanting to blame something or someone when they weren't that way. And it's just kind of reflecting on how this can be. The gentleman who was telling us the story, he said, yeah, he started to think of him as Dr. Little Boy, like this kind of behavior that hopefully we grow out of, see what really is valuable. And I think that this is just like one small example of how we might react, any of us might react to situations without the benefit of cultivation of the mind and deep reflection on, and renunciation, really, of personal pride and feeling entitled, and those kinds of attitudes, thinking the world owes me something, those kinds of things that can really like be under an undercurrent in our minds that fuel resentment and anger, feeling justified in our attitudes, and to not really see how much it erodes or destroys our own happiness and the happiness of others, the real value of harmony and caring for each other and listening to each other. There's another sutta that you might find interesting. It's number 103 in the Middle Length Discourses, where the Buddha talks about living together in harmony and what can happen when, people might have a disagreement about something. In this case, he's talking about the monks. And what if two monks start to disagree about the wording or phrasing of the Dhamma? And he said, then, when this is going on in a community, you can see, people are taking sides, and you look for the person who's the most reasonable on one side, and you go talk to them and talk about how, well, this really is minor. If we emphasize this, it leads to this disharmony that is so much worse than, this kind of like having these different views. And then you look at the other side and you see who's the most reasonable person to talk to over there, and you go over there and you say the same thing, like even if this person, the Buddha talks about these different possibilities, like you might think, okay, if I talk to this person, I'm gonna feel bothered by this. This is gonna be troublesome for me. And they're gonna be hurt because they're clinging to their views and they're obstinate and angry. But I think I can help them move from the unwholesome to the wholesome. So it really doesn't matter that I'm gonna feel troubled and they're gonna feel, like hurt by it. That's what's really important. And he goes through all these different possibilities, like, well, I'm gonna be troubled, but they're not gonna be hurt because they let go of their views easily. That's okay. I can just do it. And then, every different combination, it's like, as long as you see that you can possibly help them shift to the wholesome, you do it. regardless of personal trouble with it or whether or not they feel upset. And then in the end of the day, if you really think, I can't bring them from the unwholesome to the wholesome. And then the Buddha says, well, in that case, don't underestimate the power of equanimity in dealing with this person. So it's another thing to reflect on, that even our own equanimity in a situation like that can have a positive influence. You never know how much that can help to pave the way towards deeper understanding and reflection. So those are some thoughts, possible things to consider. I'd like to hear any comments or questions you might have. Bring out some of the nuances of some of our challenges in relationships. Erica?
Yeah.
You want to come over and...
Right. One thing I've noticed with which is related to anger, I guess, and more like the open sore model, is that some people, like I had to be like very careful with how I speak, because what I say will like, it's like some people like look for the worst interpretation of my words. So it's like actually very difficult to interact with them. So even if like they're not criticized, they tend to like look for the ways in which what I said could be kind of interpreted as critique. So I don't know what to do with that, except try not to speak so much to this person. So that's what kind of popped up in my mind.
I know that I've been in certain environments where that seems to be the way people are conditioned to interact.
Right.
Like you just, like the conditioning or what's valued in that environment is to be very critical and divisive in a certain way. It's like the person with the most points wins. And the points are, I can like,
I can twist anything you say.
Right.
Yeah, I can twist anything you say. I can find fault with anything you say.
Right.
And then that makes me better. And I think the Buddha was dealing with the same thing with the debaters.
Right.
And then he was so adamant with his disciples, like, don't get into that. Don't get into debating and winning, because you're not going to win. There's no winning.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you deal with it? I think you do like the Buddha's disciples, Right.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think? Oh, that's what you think? Let me go talk to the Buddha and see what he thinks.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably good too. Like if you can just avoid them, and then you don't have to deal with it either.
Right.
It's like, it's not good for them, it's not good for you. Why are you here again? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't like the translation for the diamond in the part.
You don't like the translation?
Yeah. I remember this differently.
Oh, okay.
And then I looked at Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, and that's more how I remembered it, because I probably read his, but it doesn't say like a diamond can't be cut. It says the diamond can cut anything.
Oh.
Which is very different in my mind.
Yeah.
And it's fun because we want to be able to like work with our minds. Even someone who's enlightened can learn stuff and grow in certain ways. It's not like, that's it. It's just set in stone and hard forever. Like it knows better all the time. It's kind of nice. It's more open. But that a diamond can cut any gemstone. It can cut anything else. It can cut through all of the junk. Yes.
Nice.
All of the junkus, all of the defilements, all of the fetters, all of the taints, all of it, it can cut through all of the junkus. and and not be affected by it. It's just like very sharp and clear and just, you know.
I like that.
So it's more fun. And I don't know the Pali well enough to know what's the right translation, but at least like in practical terms, I'm on Team Bhikkhu Bodhi for that one.
You
'cause it
know,
makes
it's
more
funny
sense.
with Pali, as you know, because the endings of the words determine the part of speech it is, and some of them are the same for different parts of speech. So you can interpret one sentence or phrase in very different ways,
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah,
I could be
which way
cut
is it
by
going?
it, or I could be,
And do the
cut
cutting.
it, and it's really, there's so much left to interpretation
Mhm.
when in translating the Pali, that I think on the upside of that, it gives us more to reflect on.
Mhm.
What do we find to be true and in line with the Dhamma? What are we cutting through, and what's the attitude in that? And then if you bring in, the other aspects of the practice, like right intention, it's not like you're cutting and you're trying to cut somebody down. That denigrate, I like the inclusion of denigration in that one list. It's like, how often is that a show of power or authority, in a very way that's not very respectable. They're not respectful of the people they're talking to, and it's not worthy of respect. And especially I think when people rise to positions of authority, um, and you can see this in the world, there are people who take that as a greater opportunity for service, or they can take it as I'm in charge and I'm gonna, like, make people do what I want them to do. Even in monasteries, like one of the large monks monastery that we love very much, they're sort of choosing a new abbot. Really felt they chose the person who didn't want the job because this person wasn't like wanting to have the authority, the honor, they
Is the only one that like didn't say, well, if nobody else wants to, I can do it. I'll do it, kind of a thing. Is the only one that just didn't say anything. It's just
Yeah.
like, "Doo, doo, doo."
Yeah, it's because I think what you're pointing to is that underneath that, well, if nobody else wants to do it, I'll do it, is this kind of like, I want to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of like that movie we watched with
The,
everybody.
Conclave.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, like, oh, everybody has dreams about picking their,
Being the Pope.
papal name,
Yeah.
or whatever it was. And it's kind of like that. It's like, the guy that doesn't want it should probably be doing it.
Yeah. I notice it a lot in politics, the people who really want to serve the public, and the people who really want the power. And they're kind of scary.
Yeah. As that president or the prime minister of New Zealand that kind of accidentally got to be, wasn't expecting that. And that went well for a lot of people. I don't know enough about the politics, so please don't get mad at me if it didn't, but it sounds good from the news that I've read. So, the person that doesn't want to do it, probably coming from it from a different place than somebody who really wants the power.
Yes, Shane.
Everybody. My hand. I kind of want to segue off of what Erica was talking about those types of people who can kind of find fault with anything. To be real honest with you, I'm one of those types of people, or have been, that I can find fault in just about anything and anybody. And I've been looking at that and some other things. More specifically, this over, like when I find somebody or something or that I care about a lot, like I tend to overgive and just be overly kind and to the point where the relationship almost kind of feels one-sided. And these two are related, by the way. So and I've been trying to understand like why this overcompensation, what, because this is a reoccurring pattern with me. Because what happens is when I don't, when I don't feel loved in the way that I think I should, I'll reject that person, place, or thing. And I think a lot of that same kind of concept applies with being super critical of being of people, places, and things. It's just it's my own conditioning. It's my own lack of feeling loved or feeling like I'm cared about. And it's just you know and I've seen that, and it's just I almost kind of feel a little foolish, having behaved the way that I have behaved, because just because the buffet doesn't have everything you want doesn't mean that there's not good stuff there.
Mhm.
And it's like my glasses have been on backwards or something. I don't really know, but we're getting a little bit better. Um, uh, I kind of on a different topic. I don't know if resentment was the way that Buddha described this, but I remember him saying something like, it's almost like having a rotting corpse around your neck.
Mhm.
The resentment and anger and all this stuff is, and that always just kind of stuck with me, like how like emotionally ugly, resentment and anger is. And I tried to really like understand that perspective. And sometimes it's just like, when I get hungry, get angry, it's like, am I taking care of myself? Am I eating right? Am I, getting enough sleep? Like, does it start with me first? It always starts with me.
Mhm.
It's always a problem with me. When I'm getting angry, it's because I find some person, place, or thing kind of unacceptable to me. So really, it kind of comes down to, for me, is learning acceptance. Um, Another thing is I've had a lot of anger issues with my father. Why did this happen to me? All this kind of sort of thing. And what I've kind of come to realize is looking at that and looking at the results of that, who I am as a result of that. Sometimes I think bad things have to happen in order for good things to happen. My life is excellent now. I feel like I'm a really good person, and it
Mhm.
was because of those events that kind of forged me into who I am today. And I don't know, I just have a lot of gratitude, and I just want to say thank you. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. I think one way to think of it is maybe those bad things didn't have to happen, but regardless, they happened and you did something good with it. And that's the way I think we can think about life.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the difference.
yeah. I mean, I think sometimes people even try to find justification for their bad behavior because something good came out of it. And I don't think that's a good way to look at it in ourselves. And I think what you're saying about how it always is like our reactions are about us. There's no end to what we could be angry about if we want to be an angry person. If I've got that open sore, it's going to get hit by something at some point. I've got to heal that. And to recognize that I have been that way in the past makes me more understanding when I encounter someone who's experiencing that now. It's okay. There's an opportunity for that to change. That can be healed. Yeah. Thank you, Shane. James?
Hello.
Hello.
It's amazing how much time I've spent in my life wasted being angry, sort of suffering those feelings. And it's weird how I didn't recognize how I was just hurting myself. You know, that's the funny thing about anger, isn't it? You know, at the end of the day, all it does is just make you feel worse and drag you down, and doesn't do much to the person you're angry about most of the time, doesn't it? You know, particularly when you sort of keep it inside. But I'm really glad though that I've sort of managed to sort of, through the help of practice, sort of improve a lot with that kind of thing, to sort of bear to let things go, and more importantly, don't seek things out to be angry about. That's something that I realised I was doing. You know, very, you know, you can walk down the street, you can drive down the street, you can find things to be angry about if that's the way you're sort of viewing the world. But thankfully, I've got a lot better with sort of not looking out for those things, or just, you know, not seeing the need for anger there really. But I think I've made a great deal of progress. You know, it's even when sort of tired and stressed as I have been in the last couple of weeks, still I find myself sort of feeling like sort of annoyance and irritability kind of coming up. But I really feel like I've got better at sort of standing and seeing it as an observer. You know, so I can't say it's gone, obviously, but it's a lot more faded and weakened, and yeah, you can see it for what it is. But honestly, what sort of, like, I don't know, not puzzles me, surprises me, amuses me sometimes, is how my mind just seems to have got the impression that I just love being angry, and so it's continuing. You know, it's still points stuff out to be angry about. You know, it's still saying, hey, there's something, and sometimes it's just so absurd as well. Sometimes it's laugh out loud. You know, the mind is suggesting something to be annoyed about. So you can kind of see the funny side of it sometimes. But I feel like though that used to be something that was sort of cut in stone with me, that would always be there. But it's sort of, I think, gradually fading, and in time, you know, it just weakens and weakens, and there just won't be that anymore. And yeah, so I'm glad with that. But and I've sort of found, like the last retreat I did, I think, I don't know whether I mentioned it, but I had a lot of sort of anger coming up and stuff. But I found very much staying with that and just observing it and not just wishing it to go away was very helpful indeed, really. But yeah, I think the main thing I'm lacking though is that well, the antidote's metta, isn't it? Really, for one who's, yeah, well, that's I think it's certainly one, and certainly something I should work on. But anyway, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you, James. There's so much in there, you know, like if we really reflect on what makes that change in us, I think we could see that progression when the Buddha talked about the mind with the open sore, and then the mind that recognizes and understands the Four Noble Truths. Because what you're describing, you did in this last retreat, when the anger comes up, you're present with it, observing it. Well, what creates that? Well, you have to have the mindfulness. So that's there. There's some right intention there of just being able to be with it with a kind of understanding, the non-cruelty, the non-ill will, in the observing of this anger or ill will or whatever it is that's arising. You know, seeing it for what it is, it's suffering. The Four Noble Truths are right there. And so when you said that the antidote is metta, it's true, and it's that cultivation of the Noble Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths. That's the framework that really helps this whole transition, and our capability to develop in being able to be with and see things the way for what they are, and deal with the dukkha in a positive way. And then the metta, of course, you know, that's the whole Brahma Viharas. It's like another medicine or another salve for that open sore, you know, and together, even if we don't think about maybe like the questions that had come in about having a resentment or something towards somebody, family member or whatever, even if you're not directly working with that. So sometimes when people say, okay, I'm practicing metta, I keep thinking about metta for them, but it's really going on. Or I've heard of people that are at a retreat and it's about metta and they say, it's just making me more and more angry. and it's like, well, that other side of it, that whole Four Noble Truths, that's got to be in there, getting cultivated. And so it's like any kind of medical situation. We got doctors on here. I'm sure it's like you try a medicine, maybe it doesn't work completely, or maybe you got to have two things working together, or you switch one out for another one. And I think the Dhamma is like that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Regina?
It's a coincidence, but yesterday I was reading in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Sutta 1080, and it's about 10 ways to eliminate resentment. And it goes through 9 scenarios where it's just examples where somebody does something morally really wrong. And then after each one of them, it asks this repeated question, which in different translation, it's rather translated differently, but it goes along the lines of, and what is mine to do? Or what can I do? Or what is useful here? I mean, like whichever translation I looked at, is different. And the interesting thing about that question was that in some cases, my initial reaction was, oh, I don't know. Like, do I want to think about what's useful here? And then after a little while, yes, I did want to think about what is really useful here. And it created a space between somebody who did something morally wrong and me wanting to react right away, underline, with resentments, and then really stepping back and asking myself, so what is really mine to do? And stepping away from that automated response that if somebody does something wrong, I need to put them in their place. And which is an extension of, I have this underlying assumption I can do away with evil in the world. I mean, if I think about it, right? It's kind of a massive delusion that I can do away with the evil in the world. And if I go to my reactions about this, like if I invent anger and resentment towards something that happens, which is completely out of my control. I mean, I'm not in charge of what other people do and how they act, but I'm in charge of whether I step back and ask myself that question. So what is mine to do? And how do I use the Dharma to act in this situation in a way that I at least can look myself in the face?
Yeah.
So I thought it was just super cool, your topic.
Well, it's super cool that you read that sutta.
Yeah.
That's a great reference. Fun.
And
That's
how it
the Book of Tens, number 80, right?
Yeah, I could read 80, and it's very short, and I think because Sujato's translation makes it even shorter than it needs to be, because I needed all the steps. I
Need
really
the repetition a little bit more. Yeah.
totally needed the repetitions to get what this Buddha can do to me. And
Yes.
so thanks for this discussion. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, Regina. I also sometimes when I read a sutta with the ellipses there, I'll read the whole thing. Like I'll insert as I read it to myself. Maybe I'll even read it out loud, insert the whole repetition to get it, because it has a different effect on the heart. To add those components in about how to reflect on this. In that sutta number, in the Majjhima Nikaya 103, I think it is, and the Buddha's talking about, it's called "What Do You Think of Me?" It's about, the Buddha starts out asking the mendicants what they think of him, but then he goes into like how to live in harmony, and if you're living in harmony in this way, and then some monk breaks a precept. He said, don't be quick to criticize. First you're going to reflect on this. So it's like what you're saying. Another thing that I do sometimes when there's a reaction coming up about someone or someone's behavior, then I think, but there are people, many people all over the world doing the same thing. I'm not getting upset about them. It's a similar idea to like, I'm not going to be able to correct and get rid of unwholesomeness in the world. It's the same idea. And it's like, why am I reacting about this one? And then, to come to more equanimity, and then that question is so valuable. What is really my responsibility? What should I do? What's best to do? Can I help in some way? It comes back to those questions of, okay, even if this person is, really clinging to their views and they're grumpy and resentful, but can I help or not? And then maybe I don't have to care about what the reaction is going to be if I think that that's going to make a difference, really in the end. And do I have the appropriate permission or responsibility? In that case, he's talking about monks living together or nuns living together, and so you do have a kind of responsibility to help each other. But in the world, you may not have that.
Yeah, and by reacting too quickly, I'm depriving myself of practicing equanimity and also giving the responsibility back to the person who acts like a fool. And I might be the fool in some situations, right? I'm not beyond that at all. But I think it just totally helps to have more space between these kind of things and not think I have to step in right away.
Yes. Another really important reflection is Ajahn Panyawado. He said, when you see something that you want to criticize in someone else, turn around and say, where do I do this? Do I do this? Have I done this? Like kind of really looking at, okay, what were the causes and conditions involved in that? Get some deeper understanding of human behavior and what brings us to behave in a foolish manner, and have some forgiveness and understanding around it for ourselves as well as others. Yeah. Thank you, Regina. Well, I think we'll draw this part to a close.